Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star's daily sports podcast. It is Wednesday, March 17th, and I'm Blair Kirkhoff. Free agency news continues to pop in the NFL, and the Chiefs have been active. They've bid farewell to Super Bowl starters like Damien Williams, Eric Fisher, and Mitchell Schwartz. They made a splash signing in offensive lineman Joe Thuney. On today's SportsBeat KC, beat writers Sam McDowell and Herbie Teope say the Chiefs aren't finished. I spoke with them on Tuesday evening, and we emphasized that by the time this show is posted, more news likely will have occurred, and that's already proven true. We speculate in the show about the Chiefs' chances of signing offensive lineman Trent Williams. Well, that's not going to happen because early Wednesday, Williams re-signed with the 49ers. That's how fast things move in free agency. So let's get started talking Chiefs with Herbie and Sam. Since the last time I talked to Herbie and Sam, so much has happened. You know, guys, we haven't talked since the Mitchell Schwartz and Eric Fisher were released. But we'll get to the offensive line in a second. Let me start off by saying we're recording this on Tuesday evening. It's going to be posted on Wednesday. Things can happen between now and then because for the last 2 days, things have been happening almost hourly with the Chiefs. Let's start with the latest on our timetable, and that is Damien Williams, no longer a member of the Kansas City Chiefs. I was a little surprised by this, but maybe I shouldn't be. Herbie, why did the Chiefs not bring back Damien Williams?
There are two factors here. Obviously, the move saves the Chiefs a little more than 2.17, so if you round that off, 2.2 million in cap space. So now you have that. And the other thing too is, you've got Darrel Williams, who they signed to a one-year deal today. You've got Clyde Edwards-Helaire return. You got Darwin Thompson returning. And those are the running backs they had last year. Obviously, Le'Veon Bell is an unrestricted free agent, but for all intents and purposes, he was pretty much not even a factor. So you've got those three running backs coming back. Damien Williams opted out last year. He is playing this year. That's his full intent is to play this year. But a whole year away from football might have said something about, do we want to bring him here when we've got three players that we know we're comfortable with? And it's going to be a crowded backfield. So they released him today, and, Chiefs fans are going to remember him forever. The game-sealing 38-yard touchdown run against the San Francisco 49ers, the Super Bowl 54, Mr. Postseason, 10 friggin' total touchdowns over the last two postseasons, six on the ground, 4 through the air. And he's a guy that Chiefs fans will remember with a fond memory. Yeah,
the Chiefs kind of saved his career, at least put it on the fast track, didn't they, Sam? I mean, he was with Miami, right? And he comes to the Chiefs, and even though he was never a full season starting running back, it's like Herbie said, he was at his best in a Chiefs uniform when they needed him most.
Yeah, I mean, he was at his best in the postseason. It was just it's kind of a weird situation with him opting out last year, and Darrel Williams, making the most of his playing time also in the postseason this last season. So it's just funny. I kind of thought going into this offseason that they were going to have to make a choice between Darrel Williams and Damien Williams. And once Herbie reported that they had signed Darrel Williams to upwards of $2 million, I texted him immediately. Just the sort of behind the scenes of this free agency period, I'm talking with Herbie way more than I would like to. So, I texted him immediately and I said, you can't pay three running backs $2 million. And so I thought that could be the writing on the wall for Damien Williams. And I wondered if perhaps the decision rested more with Darrel as opposed to Damien because he brings something different than what they have. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is a more of a similar skill set to Damien Williams. Darrel Williams is a lot different skill set. We saw he's more of a north and south runner. And so I think that keeping him is just to maybe get all the sorts of pieces of the puzzle together rather than trying to squeeze two similar items there.
I thought Darrel Williams certainly, when given the opportunity this year, made the most of it. I wish he had somehow, caught the pass in the Super Bowl, at the end. He was the one that dropped the Mahomes parallel to the ground fling. But But look, he had a great season for the Chiefs, for where he was drafted, for what his expectations are, and didn't have a fumble problem this year. I know he's lost a couple of fumbles in his career, but that wasn't an issue this season. I think 31 is going to continue to be in the Chiefs' plans for another couple years.
There is another dynamic at play too, Blair, and maybe this is something I don't think the Chiefs might have considered it, but it's pretty well known that he and Edwards-Helaire have a very good relationship going back to their days at LSU. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire all of last year kept saying that he liked the idea of being in the same locker room again with Darrel Williams. So many Williams on this roster with Darrel Williams. And so that, the fact that, you have these two who are close friends, that should bode well once again for this backfield.
Sam, you mentioned it. Let's pause before we talk about any other specific situation and tell me what it's been like covering free agency. This is your first kind of deep dive into it, if you will, and Herbie's been doing it for a while. But I know that I'm glued to social media these last couple of days, but certainly into last week and these 2 days when it officially started on Monday. It's nonstop news. And any trends? Have we seen any trends in free agency with not just with the Chiefs, but the NFL in general?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, one thing you learn is that the positions sort of go in waves. Once the top guy is off the board at one position, you see the next tier. I mean, we saw that with quarterbacks over just the last couple of hours as we're sitting here talking on Tuesday night. But, yeah, I mean, it's absolutely 24/7. I feel very fortunate that I've got somebody on the beat who's not only done this several times, but realizes that I haven't. So Herbie's been extremely helpful in that sense, but it's just a lot of reaching out to people and sort of hoping for the best, but people, I know fans are glued to social media. Herbie and I are as well. And of course, you try and get some of these yourself. We were lucky enough to get 3 or 4 today, and hopefully the rest of the week turns out okay as well.
Well, hold up. How painful was that for you to say that I was helping you there? I have to know, because I'm touched right now. My heart is pumping right now.
Yeah. Our boss, Jeff Rosen, sent me a text during the middle of this recording and said, if you could give Herbie a boost, that would be great.
All right. Mission accomplished. So, yeah, I'll tell you, Herbie, something else I've noticed here. Sometimes some teams are more active than others, obviously, and the New England Patriots, my goodness, they are reshaping their team, aren't they?
I think that's got to be the fallout from the Tom Brady effect from last year. They lose him to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and of course, there's got to be, I'm speculating here, but there's got to be some ego up in New England. Well, we can win without Tom Brady. Well, we saw last year they couldn't. They had a lot of holes in that roster, and wow, did they ever make a splash? The two moves that I absolutely love, the 2 tight ends, Joanna Smith and Hunter Henry. I mean, they're going to be running a lot of 12 personnel packages with that stud tight end group there, and I think they made a lot of good moves, with the exception of you still got to have a quarterback. They got a lot of question marks there, but yeah, they were players. They spent a lot of money.
Their quarterback is a really interesting situation. And I know we don't get too deep on the Patriots, but I thought it was hard to grade Cam Newton last year because he had nobody to throw to. And that's a tough situation for any quarterback. And we saw how Patrick Mahomes was because he didn't have an offensive line. I think you could have similar problems with your quarterback when you don't have guys to throw to. Well, they added 4 guys for him to throw to, 2 receivers and 2 tight ends. So Cam Newton's not going to have any excuses not to have a productive year for New England in 2021.
Fantastic point, Sam, because when he was throwing the ball in Carolina, his go-to target was tight end Greg Olsen. So that's a good point. They're surrounding him with weapons.
Well, I think we saw an offense similar to what, or at least the reason Tom Brady looked to get out of New England. There wasn't anybody to throw to his last year there, and we saw it cost him, toward the end of the regular season, and then certainly in that playoff loss to the Titans. And then he gets the weapons in Tampa Bay and makes the most of them. Okay, let's get back to the Chiefs. I love the headline, the subhead, Taco Tuesday. So Herbie, what's the thought on bringing Taco Charlton back?
You know, and I think they saw enough of him through 7 games last year where he was in a rotational role, and he was actually quite productive in that role. 2 sacks, 4 quarterback hits, and just imagine what he can do with a full season, a full off season, if the Chiefs actually have a good workout scheme in place outside of virtual. I thought he showed enough where you had to bring him back. He's going to be recovered from his leg injury. So I thought it was a good signing. And on a 1-year deal, I don't have the finances on that, but you got to think it's not something that's going to hurt the Chiefs.
Yeah, I like the signing as long as he fills a similar role to what he was supposed to fill for the full course of 2020, which is, like Herbie mentioned, a rotational guy that comes in on nickel and dime packages on 3rd downs. If he's a guy you're relying on to maybe take a step forward in snaps, I guess my point is I still think they need to address that position at some point this offseason, even with getting Taco Charlton back.
Agreed.
Okay, before we move on to the offensive line, let's a couple more. How about Deion Yelder? The Chiefs not bringing him back. What is the tight end situation now with the Chiefs?
It's kind of bleak. Outside of Travis Kelce, right now you've got Nick Keiser, who's an exclusive rights free agent. We haven't heard yet whether he's going to be tendered, but you got to think they will. But even if you bring him back, if I'm not mistaken, those are the only 2 tight ends you're going to have on the 2020 roster returning from last year, unless there's a surprise and they bring back Ricky Seals-Jones, which, quite frankly, I don't see that happening. So they have to address tight end here, and it's probably either going to be in free agency or the draft. But, obviously Kelce is the stud. He's the starter, but behind him, it's kind of bleak right now.
Yeah. They haven't had a second receiving tight end really since Demetrius Harris, and he had trouble catching passes. I mean, he had the drops too often for Chiefs fans. The other one who I got my information today from social media, but also you guys did a terrific job on the tracker on the KansasCity.com site. So I was keeping up with the Chiefs moves with that. Alex Brown was the other name, not a big name, Sam, but the Chiefs decided not to bring him back.
Yeah, I mean, as a cornerback that you thought, if they could develop him, he'd fit this system because he's a physical guy. But unfortunately for him, he tore his ACL in a practice last August. And so they just never really got to see him in game action. He was a guy that was on the Super Bowl roster. I don't know how many people would know that, but he did play in the Super Bowl. He played in all 3 postseason games in 2019, I guess January and February of 2020. But just when you can't get on the field and you're not able to get evaluated, it's tough for a guy that's already considered a little bit of an underdog there.
Okay, let's take a break, and when we come back, we will get into the offensive line, which is where the Chiefs have really made a lot of news this last couple of days. Hey, it's Blair. We have a special subscription offer for SportsBeat KC listeners, unlimited digital access to the Kansas City Star's award-winning sports coverage. Sign up now for 1 year of Sports Pass for access to all the sports news, features, and columns presented on the KansasCity.com site, and it's only $30. That's a 40% savings off our regular rate. Your subscription will automatically renew after the initial term at $50 unless you tell us to cancel. Your subscription helps support the sports coverage of KansasCity.com and the Kansas City Star, and that support has never been more important. Please visit kansascity.com/SportsBeatKC offer to get this special offer. And as always, thanks for listening. All right, we're back with Herbie Teope and Sam McDowell. Guys, let's let me start the offensive line part of the show by asking you, what is the Chiefs' offensive line going to look like opening day 2021? Herbie, go across the line and tell me who each starter is. And I'd love to know if you think the left tackle is on the roster right now.
Okay, from left to right, if I were to guess right now, left tackle, unknown. Yep. Left guard, Joe Thuney. Center, I'm going to say Nick Allegretti. At right guard, I'm going to pencil in Laurent Duvernay-Tardif. And at right tackle, unknown. maybe Lucas Niang at right tackle if they sign a stud left tackle. But the left tackle's got to be a stud. You cannot protect the most important position without having a stud at the second most important position. So I think they're not done shopping.
Well, I still think that left tackle is a position that they're trying to address right now, probably even as we speak here this week. And, I think I said a couple of weeks ago on this very fine program, Blair, that I thought Allegretti could play center next year. And I still think, he was drafted as a center. I felt like he played okay in his first go-round on the field. He was a second-year guy last year, but really his first action. I still think he's going to be their guy there. And I know that, of course, there's a Raiders guy, former Chief, that got released today.
Rodney Hudson.
Yeah, we'll see what the money is there. I think he could be too expensive for the Chiefs unless they would also go cheap at left tackle. But I think that they need to invest their resources at that left tackle position. They seem to be really high on Lucas Niang. We heard a lot about him in a year where he was not even on the roster last year. And I think that he's going to be in the mix somewhere along those five. And he can play guard and tackle, especially right tackle, is what they need right now.
I was surprised that the Raiders did not bring back Rodney Hudson. He decided not to come back to the Raiders. That he's an important part of that really good offensive line that they've got in Vegas.
Strength of their team there. I mean, I thought that was the strength of their offense last year, especially in those two matchups against the Chiefs, that they just could not pressure Carr whatsoever. I mean, they got rid of 4 offensive linemen. I'm a little confused about some of the moves going on in Vegas.
Okay, so let's talk about before we get to Thuney or Thuney. I've got to write it down to remind myself because when I look at it, I want to say Thuney, right? But it's not. It's Joe Thuney. How about the Andrew Wiley tender? Herbie, why bring Andrew Wiley back?
I'll let Sam take that one since he was all over it.
Well, I think that Wiley, if first of all, he gives you insurance. You do have, Herbie and I just projected the starting offensive line as a guy at right guard who didn't play a single snap last year because he opted out of the season. Well, Andrew Wiley played 88% of this team's snaps, most of them at right guard, and obviously had to fill in a tackle, an experiment that did not go well, but they thought that he was okay at right guard, good enough to play. And if that guy's your backup, and we've seen these past 2 seasons how often they have to use their backup, you feel a lot more comfortable going to him than you would an undrafted rookie, which a lot of times fills those 6th, 7th, and 8th spots on the line. Plus, you do feel like he's got a little bit of versatility. He can play on the left side. He can play on the right side. You want a guy that can play multiple positions as a backup. I don't think he starts this year, but I do think he's a rotational backup.
And that's a good point, Sam, because because he is a restricted free agent, so you're not committing a long-term deal with him right here by tendering him. So you get a guy who's been in the system for the last 3 years. He knows the scheme. And he is more than capable of plug and play inside. But like you said, Sam, if they find themselves in a situation where he has to kick outside again, then you just pray for the best.
Well, I'm going to recommend to Joe that he drop the H from his last name just to avoid any confusion on the pronunciation. But Joe Thuney, that was the big splash of the week. It was quite the contract was huge. Herbie, take us through the rationale for signing Joe Thuney.
When you look at the Chiefs' offensive line, Blair, and you even go back to when you and I were on the beat, before I took that little break and went to New Orleans, it seemed like they were always trying to find a left guard. They went through a hodgepodge of veterans there at that position. But when you get with this guy, you get an all-pro who's just 28 years old, and he's now an anchor over there on the left side of the offensive line, which is why, to me, it's critical they do find that left tackle. But Thuney is a guy who's a stud, a clear stud. You see those photos of him blocking for Tom Brady, and then he's got the guys on lockdown. This is a good signing for the Chiefs as far as getting that left guard position locked down, and it's also a good anchor piece there for that left side of the offensive line.
Yes, second team All-Pro, I think, in 2019 for New England. Won a couple of rings with the Patriots. Part of just a great offensive line in New England. How about the money? What is it, 5 for 80 with the $43 million guaranteed?
Correct. And no, but he's the top end of the offensive lineman, and you hear those numbers, and it's astounding to know that he's not even the highest paid guard in the NFL. But it just goes to show you, if you want one of these elite kind of guys, you're going to have to spend money for them. And the Chiefs clearly had him high on their list, and they were willing to open the bank for him. But personally, the money aside, again, it goes back to what he's bringing to this unit. I think it's a great sign.
Blair, it illustrates the need that they thought that they had there. We all saw it in the Super Bowl, but it shows that the move that they made there is not just based on what we saw in one game in February in Tampa. It's based on what they saw over the whole course of the season. And obviously, by paying a guy that sort of money, they felt like this was a significant need. I know this is probably unusual. I don't get quite as caught up in the money as a lot of people do. I think it's more about, is this guy a fit for your scheme, for your locker room, all of that. You could pay a guy nothing, and if he's not a fit for you, it doesn't make a lot of sense. I think if you're absolutely sure and confident that the guy's going to be a fit for exactly what you need, that the money is a little bit less important than what people think is. We've seen the way the Chiefs have been able to bend the cap the past couple seasons.
The Chiefs clearly made a statement, though. Both of you guys alluded to it, with the offensive line, because Austin Ryder won't be back. And so Fisher, Schwartz, Austin Ryder, and we've mentioned both Lucas Niang and Laurent Duvernay-Tardif. The Chiefs are counting on a couple of players who opted out last year. I think if we came up with a depth chart right now, I agree with Herbie, what you said earlier, Herbie, that those would be that would be the right side of the offensive line with Alec Reddy in the middle. There's a little trepidation there for me. The Chiefs' offensive lines have never been, under Andy Reid, I don't think we've ever seen them as, among the top 3 or 4 or 5 in the NFL, but always, 10 to 15, capable, the occasional, they have all-pro player, maybe a Pro Bowl player. Mitchell Schwartz clearly was one of the best at his position. Mitch Morris was a solid center. LDT had some seasons, but reliable, I think, is what we always kind of consider that offensive line. And now, not only is unknown the starting left tackle right now, I think unknown is the relative overall strength of this line. I think the Chiefs are putting a lot of faith in players that did not play for the Chiefs last year. I just find that interesting.
Well, that's why I think, bringing back a guy like Andrew Wiley makes sense, is because LDT did not play last year. Mike Rimmers is still out there, and I think he's a guy that would be interested in coming back. We had this discussion. I think Herbie and I even disagreed on it because of his age. I still think it makes sense to explore what Mike Rimmers wants in free agency, because he can give you some protection. He started almost every game last year, but he was not brought in to start. He was brought in because of his versatility. He played left guard. He played right tackle. I would bring him back in that role.
All right. So with the signing of Thuney, does that take the Chiefs out of the market for Trent Williams, Herbie?
I think they can still get creative enough with the cap. The fact that they now have close to $2.2 million available, and Thuney's contract, it did a pretty good job of structuring that. If I'm not mistaken, he's only going to count $4.5 million against the cap this year, so they were able to work out a deal that's somewhat team friendly. I don't think they're out of the running. They just have to find a way to outbid San Francisco. That's the key thing there, and all these other suitors who have money. Williams is going to command a premium price, no doubt about that. He's going to command a high-end contract, and you have to decide right then and there, are you willing to pay that kind of money for a left tackle who clearly is one of the best in the game, but he's also up there in age? Or do you want to draft one like they did with Eric Fisher in 2012 and just develop that guy into a Pro Bowl type player? But if, to go back to your question, yes, I believe they do have enough money to still be flexible to be in the running for him.
He's 33 years old, Trent Williams. He's a future Hall of Famer. It reminds me of a place that the Chiefs were a couple decades ago when they brought in Willie Roaf. And Roaf was in the final, third or quarter of his career, but he gave the Chiefs, was it 4 seasons or 5 seasons of terrific, offensive line play, Pro Bowl seasons. He just stacked them up. And look, I think tackles, am I wrong about this, Herbie? But tackles to me can play into their even to their late 30s.
If they're relatively injury-free, correct. If they haven't had any major injuries to knees or backs or anything like that, I think they can. But once they start building up those injuries, then you got to be concerned.
All right, so listen, by the time this posts on Wednesday, news, the Chiefs, there may be more roster flux for the Chiefs, so we apologize for that. But are we convinced the Chiefs aren't finished in free agency?
I'm convinced they're not finished.
No, absolutely not. No. As much as Herbie and I might not mind taking the next 3 days off, no, I think they're going to be busy for these next few days.
There's money to be spent, and there's also a host of East players right now who are projected to be unrestricted free agents by the deadline, 4 p.m. Eastern time, Wednesday, 3 p.m. Arrowhead time. So you're probably going to see some of these guys coming back on 1 or 2 year contracts. So yeah, they're not fit.
Okay, so I would suggest to continue to follow the tracker on kansascity.com. Hey, I didn't want to leave tonight though, Herbie, without asking you to share a thought about Drew Brees, who retired, made it official earlier this week. And you covered, not only have you covered Patrick Mahomes, but you covered Drew Brees over the last, 5 years. You've had a pretty good run of covering quarterbacks as an NFL beat writer. What do you remember most about Drew Brees, or what will you remember most?
I will remember my first time walking out there to a training camp practice. You got to remember, like, when I joined the Saints beat, I went through years of covering Chiefs quarterbacks, before Alex Smith arrived and solidified the position. But we're talking, the dark times of Chiefs quarterbacks, Matt Castle, Kyle Orton, Brady Quinn. I mean, the list goes on. But the first time I saw Brees, I was just really struck by the way he approached practice. He would take wide receivers off to the side, away from the prying eyes of the media or even the fans that were out there. But he was walking wide receivers through why he wanted them to run a specific route, and this is the reason why he's going to throw the ball. And I always found that fascinating. I was like, so that's what an elite quarterback does. And then you come here to the Kansas City and you see Mahomes doing the same thing, and I think it's that the way they're wired. Brees was a perfectionist. Brees was just he's a good quarterback, obviously, but to me, that really opened my eyes to what you want to see in a quarterback. And he had a heck of a career.
Look, I think he's an all-time top 10 quarterback. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. One Super Bowl. I think about that with players like him, and Aaron Rodgers has one. Russell Wilson has one. It's great that they got one, right? You want to have that on your resume, but I think about that with Patrick Mahomes. It would have been great for him to get his second one already. He's got the rest of his career to do it. But, I imagine that Drew Brees, his resume would just look a little better if he was a multiple Super Bowl.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. And I think like a lot of the Saints players, if you talk to them, they'll say the same thing. They really wanted to win the second one for Drew Brees. For all his records, he has never won the league's MVP award. How about that? That is crazy.
That is crazy. All right. Hey, continue to follow these guys on kansascity.com, Herbie Teope and Sam McDowell. They are bringing you the most up-to-date Chiefs news. So, hey, guys, thanks a lot. We'll do it again soon.
Thanks, Blair.
Thanks, Blair.
That'll do it for today. Thanks to our SportsBeat KC production staff of Derek Donovan, Beth Welsh, Monty Davis, Jeff Rosen, Chris Fickett, and Savannah Smith. A tip of the cap to Herbie Teope and Sam McDowell for stopping by and talking Chiefs and free agency. Links to their stories can be found in the show notes and on kansascity.com. And be sure to follow the free agent tracker that they have started on kansascity.com. Hey, we got another deal for you. For a limited time, you can subscribe to Sports Pass for 99 cents a month. That's right, 99 pennies a month. After 3 months, it auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless you cancel. And what a time to subscribe. The Royals are leading the Cactus League at spring training. March Madness is at our doorstep, and it is never not Chief season, as you can tell by today's show. How do you get it? You go to kansascity.com/SportsPass2020. That's kansascity.com/SportsPass2020. You want more than just sports coverage? Check out the entire Kansas City Star product. Sports, news, features, commentary, analysis, the whole thing. You get all the stories written by my talented colleagues, plus additional national news, sports, and business coverage with the e-edition. The details for all of these deals can be found at account.kansascity.com. kansascity.com/subscribe. If you're having trouble hunting down any of these offers, you send me an email, bkirchhoff@kcstar.com. I will get you to the right place. So whether it's the Sports Pass or the full subscription, you're getting and supporting the best sports and news coverage in Kansas City and helping us produce programs like SportsBeat KC. Thanks for listening, and we will be back on Thursday with another episode. I bet we talk Royals.